So please join me in these words of aspiration. We take refuge in love and clear seeing. We live courageously in this world of birthing, dying. Our hearts embrace all companions on the path of lucidity and freedom. However innumerable beings are, I vow to meet them with kindness and interest. However inexhaustible the states of suffering are, I vow to touch them with patience and love. However immeasurable the dharmas are, I vow to explore them deeply and thoroughly. However incomparable the mystery of interbeing, I vow to surrender to it freely. From this day forth, with wisdom and compassion as my lamp and staff, I dedicate all my life energies to the welfare of all beings. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I'd like to make a space near to the beginning for sharings and observations. But before we do that, I'd like to, in a contemplative fashion, read through a poem that was written by Robert Aiken Roshi. Some of you may know of his work, or Mary and I visited him in Honolulu years ago, just before he died. And see if you can let the words of this poem kind of just evoke something for you, so you're not thinking about it, filing away for something later, oh, later on I'll think about it. It's like right now, right? Can you see the whole of my life, from the moment I wake up to the moment I vanish, right? A life of Dharma. And I don't know if he named it this or whether somebody else named it this, but it did have a title, and it was called Verses for an Environmental Practice. Okay? And this is a kind of like modern Bodhisattva vow, if you like. Okay? It goes like this. Waking up in the morning, I vow with all beings to be ready for sparks of Dharma from flowers or children or birds. Sitting alone in Zazen, I vow with all beings to remember I am sitting together with mountains, children, and bears. Looking up at the sky, I vow with all beings to remember this infinite ceiling in every room of my life. When I stroll around in the city, I vow with all beings to notice how lichen and grasses never give up in despair. Watching a spider at work, I vow with all beings to cherish the web of the universe. Touch one point and everything moves. Preparing the garden for seeds, I vow with all beings to nurture the soil to be fertile each spring for the next 1,000 years. When people praise me for something, I vow with all beings to return to my vegetable garden, eat to, and give credit where credit is due. With tropical forests in danger, I vow with all beings to raise hell with the people responsible and slash my consumption of trees. With resources scarcer and scarcer, I vow with all beings to consider the law of proportion. My have is another's have not. Watching gardeners label their plants, I vow with all beings to practice the old horticulture and let the plants identify me. Hearing the crickets at night, I vow with all beings to keep my practices simple, just over and over again. Falling asleep at last, I vow with all beings to enjoy the dark and the silence and rest in the vast unknown. I heard an anecdotal story the other day about Dan Rather, who was, for those non-American people, he was a very well-known kind of news anchorman he was sort of like the voice of kind of reasonableness and so on for a long time in America. And he was interviewing Mother Teresa. And apparently, this is anecdotal, so, it's not necessarily the words that actually took place. I don't really know. It's like from someone to someone to someone to me to you. But apparently he asked her what she said when she prayed. And she said, I don't say anything, I just listen. And then Dan Rather asked her, when you're listening, what does God say to you? And she said, God doesn't say anything, he listens. I thought that was very beautiful. Right? Just for a moment, can we sit together and pray in this fashion? Just to listen with every cell of your being and realize that you are continuously, day and night, whether you're aware of it or not, you are being listened to. this can be very subtle and tricky. Okay? When you're busy trying to listen to what's going on, you forget that you're being listened to. And when you start thinking about the fact that you're being listened to, you forget about listening. Or is this wrong? This is not your experience. Well, I always have this complete beautiful merging. Right? I don't think so. Right? I think a lot of the time. Right? And we have such a how to put it, such a seduction, right? To just get ourselves involved in bits and pieces of living. And, just completely, the mystery of like this extraordinary happening that's taking place, of being alive in companionship, in relationship with countless other living beings. And the whole thing, in a sense, moving as if almost like one organism. Whether we call this, Mother Teresa naturally would talk about God, but she might have talked about the mystery, or nature unfolding, or the Dharmadhatu, or, right? There's gazillions of names for this ungraspable, extraordinary and sometimes in the name of kind of, we've invented, these bits and pieces have invented spiritual paths. We've invented spiritual practices, right? And we're so busy practicing them, right, that we forget. We think we're practicing in order to get somewhere, right? And there's no appreciation of like this, where, this here, this happening, right? In a way it's just the real path, the deep mystical teachings and practices are just utterly simple. You don't have to do any foundation practice. You're already well founded, right? We just temporarily forgot. I'd like at this point just to see if there are any observations or questions or sharings that are coming up, right, for you and your, I'm going to be presumptuous, but I'm going to be presumptuous on the side of the positive, right? Like the various wrestlings that are taking place in your wrestling with the mystery of life, and how to, in a sense, honor the mystery of life and be engaged with the kind of challenges and the difficulties and so on that we meet with every single day in our relationships and with relationships between people. We don't have to kind of go on forever about the negatives in the world. There's a lot of it. I think we all agree, right? And there's a kind of a wrestling with this. What does this mean? How do I work with this? How do I make sense of this? So perhaps there's some observations coming up from how you're wrestling, right? The questions that are like with you, right? Or perhaps even sharing of an understanding, even in poetry form. So I'll stop for a moment and just see if there's some space. And if Susan Cowan.
Yes, I just had, so nice to see you, Tarchin. I just had a kind of family crisis in that my grandson, who's now 8, sorry, has been having trouble, sorry, with his vision. And his 2 eyes don't line up properly. And there's the issue of surgery, sorry, Patra, which might make things worse. And I have to, obviously it's not my decision, but I'm very involved with my grandson and care about him a lot. And So I've been wrestling with what attitude to have about this. And I think from what you've been saying also, is what I'm coming around to, that there's so much more to life than just this one eye that he's having trouble with.
Mm,
And we're on a very vision dependent type of phase in society. But there's so many other things to the miracle of his life and the possibilities of his life and the value of being a human being. I was there when he was born, so this is it, like, is struggling with it, opening up one's view to be able to be present in the most, helpful, meaningful way.
mm.
Anyway, that's kind of what's going on now.
Good. That's a good struggle. I don't mean that facetiously. I mean it's like it's the real deal, right? And in a sense, as a person who's kind of dedicated a huge amount of life to practicing and unfolding Dharma, and then we get this, right? And it's like it's almost like, okay, now all that was preparation. Now the real work comes, right? How do I work with this? And we get better at it, actually, right? There's a huge amount of allowingness that's needed. But at the same time, we're called to action, to make decisions, to surgery or not surgery, it sounds like you're talking about. And then while we're like, how can I engage with this in a way that I can bring my greatest strength and capacity to the question? I always felt this. It was like when we've got a really big life challenging something facing us, right? That surely it would be better to be able to bring my best qualities and my best abilities to this rather than my weakness and my anxiety and my kind of fear and my, right? It's like, it makes sense in a way. I mean, I've got a big problem here. I need all my talents to come to it. And beginning to, in a sense, recognize that if I can make a decision that's helpful, now obviously I make a decision, I make a movement that's helpful, but somehow learning to make friends, make peace with the unknown, the unknowing, the impossible, right? This is not something which is like a far out thing that, we have to do on the spiritual path. This is just a fact that if a human being is going to survive in this world well, given the way the world is, well, they will have learned how to do this. There's no shoulds about it. It's like, it's just there. We need a bigger view. You sort of hinted at it. We need a bigger view. And it's almost like when I have this larger view, and then I touch this, right? And sometimes we're just waiting. Like I'm sure that some days Mother Teresa probably sat there and listened and waited and waited and waited and waited and waited, and there was no sense of being listened to at all. Because listening's very quiet. I like the image, because to really listen, you almost hold your breath. You're just like, this is like, so-called to hear the pin drop. And I wonder how, people say, well, I don't know, I couldn't hear God listening or anything. Bloody birds were all singing around and so on, and chirping, and the cat was kept on rubbing itself up against my leg and disturbing me, right, in my meditation, right? And so maybe God listens through the ears of spiders, if spiders had ears, right? In the ears of fish, in the ears of trees. And what does the world, how does the world, like, I see you. And, sometimes when we get I empathize with this. I mean, it's very different. I'm an old geezer, so it doesn't matter. I'm falling apart. Whereas when you're young, right, you've got a whole theoretical life ahead, so you don't want to fall apart at that point, right? So you know, I've got wet macular degeneration in one eye, and I've got a big blind spot happening in this eye, and it's kind of fading away. And I go, oh, this is terrible. And then, you know, I complained, and you know who I went? I went and complained to my dear friend Kelvin. Well, my complaint really didn't go very far, right? Not because he cut me off, but because I cut myself off. You know, just in case, just to remind you, if you saw the film that we just got released last week, I put it out on the link for it. But Calvin's in the film, and he's blind, right? He's been blind for quite a few years, and he's an extraordinary, wonderful person, right? Who has, in a sense, partly become extraordinary. Well, you have to say has become extraordinary through his struggle. I'm not saying it that, you know, I'm not to diminish, like it's only the struggle that made him extraordinary. Maybe he had talents and he was already extraordinary, kind of thing, right? I'm not referring to that, but I'm saying the fact is that he met with, it's a catastrophe, right? The beginning, you know, I had a moment of, God, I can't see. I won't be able to drive the car. I can't see. What are we going to do up here? We'll have to move. We won't have a place to live. What are we going to do? Ah! Well, fortunately, after years and years of practice or familiarization, but that state didn't actually hang around too long. Right? You have this bigger view, right? And it's not a question of, in the bigger view, right? It can be wonderful. I'm getting old and falling apart. How amazing life is happening this way, right? Oh, getting young and perking up and all sorts of possibilities. How wonderful, because it's all part of this. And we know this, but we forget. And you know, an awful lot of Dharma teaching is just, you know, talk and stuff, right? In the name of reminding each other of what we already know in the core of our being, because we're born from this universe. This is where we come to from. And no matter what, it doesn't matter what we do. We can have an eye fall out, we can have a leg fall off, right? But we cannot fall out of this universe.
And can I just say one more thing about this? You know, and in regard to this is someone I'm personally involved with, that I was there when they were born and seen grow up,
Yeah.
you know, as a very particular, you know, part of the human race. We don't often get that opportunity with another being, but I constantly, you know, worry about children in Gaza, and I'm saving insects and trying to share the merit. And I think this does apply, though, to all these beings that we see in states of suffering, that if we can, you know, pull the curtain apart and expand our vision and see their divine potential by us being able to see it that way, we will create fewer limitations for others.
I'd like to just send some words back to you.
Thank you.
It goes like this: with deeply caring awareness, mine the richness of this moment. It has been building throughout all eternity to manifest. This poem was written by Susan Cowan.
And I decided to add a couple words at the end: to manifest in this magnificence.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Yes.
I've been contemplating sort of awareness a little bit, and one thing that I've really noticed is that I seem to very much be inspired kind of by nature and, like, for example, bird song, and to kind of, I find that really helps me to kind of settle into have glimpses of the present moment awareness, and kind of like that feeling, you know, and you just forget about what's going on in your head, and just kind of be a little bit more at one with what's with the world. And but what struck me was that actually, am I always looking out there, and for that kind of guidance to for present moment, to be at one or abide in present moment awareness, and is there kind of, I think I've probably had this sense of, oh, is there something missing? Or should I be looking within sometimes? And I think sometimes if I'm struggling with my emotions or having turmoil, I do look within, but generally I'm looking beyond and out there, and that's kind of, I don't know, just a question that's come up for me.
I mean, it's one that you will struggle with until another question comes along, right? And I got another question specifically in mind, and I can tell you this, but it doesn't matter if I tell you this. It's not yours until it comes along for you, right? But somewhere along the line, you might go, what do I mean by out there? And what do I mean by in here or in there, or however you want to put it? And where does the out there take place? Does it take place in a different place than the in there takes place? Okay? And then with that, when that becomes like a really powerful engagement, that kind of theme, right? Then sometimes the dilemma that you expressed, or the question that you expressed, kind of it doesn't get answered, but it gets more like it fades out because there's a whole other thing that's going on. It's resolved. Okay? If there's anyone online who's wanting to say anything, you're going to kind of wave like crazy or something, get my attention. But Stephen might be watching this; he can alert me. Janet.
The answer you just gave Jane probably goes a long way to answering. Last time we met, I talked about how I was seeing my, seeing delusion. I talked about delusion. And there's still that kind of theme going on for me, and I'm kind of waiting for it to, for some insight into it. But I still have this, I get this feeling of, this life and these thoughts and and all of this seems so, it's so kind of transparent and illusory in regards to, and there's something that's so much greater in a sense. So I've got this, this and that going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of, so I'm kind of just hanging in there waiting to sort of understand how I'm sure there isn't, how to work with this idea, this kind of idea of the limitations of my own self, or my own thinking, or my own experience, and the extraordinary expanse of awareness and the life. You understand what I mean?
Yeah. I understand what you're saying, but what's the problem? I mean, for example, you don't see an experience the way a grasshopper does. I mean, this is very fundamental. We're not. spiritual beings, like we could look at it and think, oh, we're stuck in this human body, but we're really on our way to our true self, which is this kind of vast cosmic consciousness that's the truth. But actually, the real mystics, right? The kind of like nature mystics, or actually a lot of them were, the real ones were very practical. They say, well, look, I'm a human being. There's nothing negative about this, right? I mean, just think of billions of years of evolution and humans have come up. New stuff, right? It's nothing negative, it's a miracle, right? And it comes with a certain kind of seeing and a certain type of experiencing and knowing and so on. There's no way you can get around that. But part of the human being also allows us to conceptualize. Right? In that conceptualizing, we can actually sometimes make a quantum leap of imagining that I'm not the only conscious being in the universe. That maybe other beings are also imagining, and they're also, in a sense, manifestations. The universe that they experience is a manifestation of the functioning that they are. And the functioning that they are is the functioning that they are in relationship with everything else. Is pretty kind of hard to kind of grip with. So on one hand, like Umberto Maturana, he seemed to frequently draw people's attention to how it's like really important to keep your domains and that you're of consideration clearly distinguished, right? And don't muddle them up, right? That why can't we have multiple worlds within worlds interpenetrating without obstruction rather than only this one or that one, right? It's like, how can I be a limited being with limited capacity and understanding, and in a sense, synchronize well with a vast universe that's beyond my control, right? And at the beginning, it's sort of like, how can I do? We ask the question, how can I do this? And we're kind of expecting someone to tell us how to do this. The question is actually a question that's in search of an answer. But gradually, right, we might, in the maturing of our being, we may gradually come to the point where we're not so concerned about someone else giving us an answer to the question. Right? And we begin to see that this question is arising in the fact of my living. I am a kind of totality. I am, to make a Tarchin from scratch, first of all, you have to make a universe. To make a Janet from scratch, first of all, you just need this person and that person. Small stuff, right? Kind of not like Tarchin, whole universe, right? Right? To make an ant from scratch, first of all, you have to make a universe. To make a tree from scratch, first of all, everything's the whole universe. Everyone's the whole universe, and yet that person is unbelievably stupid if they're the whole universe of all this knowledge, because they're stuck when they only see this. You behave like a human being. How weird is that? I mean, actually, what do you expect? The cat to behave like a human being, or a butterfly to behave like, a fish, a donkey, an American president? Right? Imagine the possibility of there being such an expanse, right? And then learning, somehow holding this quietly, right? To sit in zazen, right? Regularly, right? Just to sit down into the stillness, listening to the listening, and our intuition, right? Is kind of what we call wisdom, is a kind of intuitive arising of understanding, of connection, of possibility.
My experience of awakening has been hearing and experiencing similar things again and again until some mysterious connection is made, and then there is a part of an ongoing realization that shapes the next series of connections.
Mm.
And I was listening to an online talk from Ram Dass, who said that the human mind is an endless river of thoughts, and our suffering is caused when we attach to one particular thought to the exclusion of others. And just at that moment, something clicked in that, and then for weeks afterwards, when I find myself like frustrated because there's a traffic jam and I'm in a hurry, I can just go back to what he said and realise the truth of it. And that's actually like shifted things quite a lot, and also kind of shown me something about the process by which I believe I occur.
Yeah, I mean, all of this is like a gradual moving towards what I think of sometimes as a life of living Dharma, right? That our Dharma practice, if you like, or exploration, isn't kind of a little island in an ocean of the rest of our life of busyness and stuff to do. It's like your whole life it becomes more and more integrated in this. Right? And sometimes we meet with things that are just so trying and they crack us. Right? Kelvin sent a poem in, and he wasn't coming today, and he sent a poem and asked me to share it. And for those who perhaps don't know, at present, Kelvin's wrestling is not at all with his blindness, right? Is wrestling with the fact that Irene, his 40, 50 year life partner, right, is fading out, and she's now in a care facility, and it's extremely difficult. Okay? And he wrote this, he called it Grief and Praise. My tears are warm, fresh from my heart. They cool as they fall off my cheeks. Some roll into the corner of my mouth, drying on my lips, sweet to my tongue. They have a life of their own. I want to live alongside them. It's this willingness, in a sense, to kind of embrace our grief, to embrace our challenge, to embrace our wonderment, to embrace this is the way the universe is arising for us. Right? Extraordinary. There's in the Buddhist tradition, there's the story that Shakyamuni, before he became known as Buddha, was he spent a huge amount of time meditating and studying, and he studied with all the great teachers of the time, and he was intelligent and dedicated and so on. He worked really hard at it, and after years and years and years and years, he was unable to resolve the question that he was holding from the beginning, which was suffering and coming to the end of suffering. Even though some of the teachers that he studied with said, "Oh, you've got it. You've realized it. So now you can stay here and co-teach with me, and we'll set up a school, and we could get an internet and do the thing online, and we'd have millions of students and so on, and that'd be great." And so in other words, like he basically exhausted all the kind of conventional understandings of what the spiritual life was about. He tried everything. He'd fasted himself to bits, like not eating and so on, and austerities and starvation and kind of, you name it. And none of this kind of worked, right? And then this is the story, right? He kind of had a bit of a drift in his mind. Can you imagine? Don't forget, it's okay. He wasn't the Buddha. He was Shakyamuni. He could drift in his mind. Unlike you, he drifted in his mind. And he had a reminiscence of being a very, very young child, sitting outside in the garden, in the sort of small-scale palace that he was raised in, right? Lovely garden, birds around and trees and so on. And at that moment, he kind of remembered, not intellectually, but he remembered a feeling, a visceral feeling of belonging and home. Right? It's like and while he was doing, he remembered too that as this young child, he kind of fell into an awareness in this really good feeling. He just sat there and he was just with his breathing. And he was like breathing with the trees and the plants and the birds and all this kind of thing. And so he thought, oh, well, maybe I'll just reconnect with that. Right? He reconnected with an intuitive understanding that had been with him from the very beginning, right? That he was connected and part of an immensity of life unfolding. And he wasn't at that point trying to realize this or develop that samadhi or study this practice or learn these kind of categories of analysis, right? This is why I say he was like, I had this sense of belonging and home. And I'd like to share with you a longish poem, right? And let this poem be the kind of springboard for some exploration for this morning, because I think it touches on so much of what we've hinted at already. You've been hinting at in your observations and sharings and what we're all living
Archie,
with.
there's just one more question from Denise.
Yes, sorry. I'm sure you're there. I just can't find you. But Denise, go ahead.
Mhm.
I touch him. No, I just can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to say, just wanted to tell you that I've been really struggling with how to respond to a friend who hasn't been communicative, and I've been finding a real struggle with this. And over the last week or so, been thinking, how can I talk to this person without hurting their feelings, but getting my message across that we need to be able to communicate more freely and openly. But I just wanted to say that your opening Bodhisattva vow just really reminded me that that's the foundation of my teaching, and it's just such a wonderful guide for everything that I'm dealing with is the Bodhisattva vow. So thank you for reminding me this morning just how amazing that foundation practice is. Yep, thank you.
Good. Great. Would you like to have a stretch? Just to stand up, have a stretch, and you can stand up, have a stretch where you are, and then we'll look at this bunch of words. And when you stand up, and I want you to all enter into the poem, right? And this is it's called the poetry of movement, right? Can we find the poetry of movement? Never mind the poetry of words and concepts. Right? We're all poets, right? this poem didn't originally have a title, but somewhere along the line, years later, a title that sort of got stuck on it, right? So I'm not sure whether it's the title of the poem or not, right? But it's called Journey of Now. Right? And in a way, it's hinting at an engagement with life unfolding over a lifetime. Okay? Our poem from Robert Aiken Roshi was almost like the story of Dharma over a daytime. You know, from the moment you wake up until the moment you go back to sleep at night. This is like the course of the day. Well, this one is a lifetime. Okay? And I'll read parts of it, and then I won't finish the whole thing. I'll make a few comments, and then we'll go a bit further and so on, because it's maybe longer even than we're going to look at. And it begins like this. Being is a lonely place, a lump surrounded all by space. It crawls upon its knees for grace and cries aloud to walk apace towards another being. Little being seeks greater being, a solitary trek to know, cooperates with other beings, fashioning a stronger car to cross the deserts who we are and come back home where safe and meaningful we rest. This wandering on in solitude, our voices echoing from the rocks, attempts to bridge the fathomless space that separates us all from grace, are seen as normal and as sane, despite the fact it gives us pain. The blindfolds wrapped around our eyes confuse our hearing of the cries. We stumble on, yearning for grace, while blindly building bridges into space. I'm just going to pause here for a moment. Okay? In a way, this is how most of us, most beings, in a sense, consciously embark on a spiritual journey at this point. A lump in space. That's what you are. You're just a lump in space, right? This is not a philosophical thing. This is your experience. You experience yourself as a lump in space, right? And around you is space, and there are other lumps, right? And we kind of cooperate with the other lumps, right? To try and we're trying for grace. We want to feel good. We want to be meaningful. We want to kind of have a good life. And so together we kind of lumps fashion a stronger car. And so, you know, some of the cars are like the cars that we fashion together are psychotherapy, right? Religion, right? You know, politics, social work, all kinds of things. It's like how to be a better lump. How to get the lump from you know, a place that's unsatisfactory lumpiness to somehow transcendent lumpiness, right? But not for a moment do you want to transcend lumpiness, right? This is like it's kind of a basic, it's an understanding that's so deep that we don't even think to question it. The cat ends here, I begin here. The tree begins there, the bird begins there. Right? Things. We don't have to call it lumps. It's just the way I phrased it here. Right? You know, the problem with living in a world of being lumps is that lumps, you know, they're born, the lumps are born, and then they die. Right? They kind of get to an end. And so we're terrified to kind of like end our lumpiness, because that's all we are, is a lump. right? We're hanging on like, I mean, consider this is like huge, right? Lumps can get sick. You know, like this is a sick lump, you know, you get back to a healthy lump. It doesn't matter what we do. I'm a meditator lump, right? I'm a lump who's now in samadhi. I'm a lump who's now, you know, having this nimitta or this wonderful experience or so on. There's still lumps in space, right? You get up from your meditation cushion and you walk across to the sink and get a glass of water. It's over there. You have to cross the space, right? And in the space, there's scary stuff, the unexpected, right? The unplanned. With this, it's just this is a kind of a feeling for how our life unfolds. You know, it's full of changes and challenges. Lumps are, in a sense, cursed with hope and fear. You know, I'm a very hopeful lump. I'm a kind of hopeful lump. Right? I'm a terrified lump, right? But nobody's questioning the lumpiness, right? And so what do, we gather together like we're looking for grace, for the blessing, for the we don't even know what we're looking for, but there's something in us wants to this. You know, maybe we go, I know what I'm looking for, God. Or I know what I'm looking for, enlightenment, right? But actually, this is just, if it's true, it's grace. We're all looking for grace. Okay? You know, the lumps are plagued with what the Tibetan teachings call the 8 worldly concerns. You know, they're plagued about praise and blame and loss and gain and fame and loss of reputation and pleasure and pain, and right. This is the world of lumps, and as long as you are a lump in a world of lumps, this is what you get. Lumps go with this kind of experience, right? Lumps can collide. Lumps sometimes glue together, right? Little being seeks greater being. In that one, when I said greater being, I put it in a capital letter. We get kind of a hint. I'm looking for truth, for God, for, you know, our kind of aspiration, right? Little being seeks greater being, and yet it feels like a solitary trek to know, right? Our deep kind of intuitive, the things we really wrestle with are quite often very private. Right? I mean, the things that are most meaningful to us, most kind of juicy, it's almost like we're either embarrassed or we're afraid to share them with others. So I reveal myself to be a kind of vulnerable, growing, God knows what, in a mysterious universe who has a huge aspiration to understand and to live well, and at the same time a huge kind of about, is this even possible? Okay. Being is a lonely place, a lump surrounded all by space. It crawls upon its knees for grace. And sometimes it feels a bit like a struggle. You're just kind of crawling, right? And cries aloud, help, to walk a pace towards another being. But at the same time, we're scared to walk with another being, terrified. I mean, they might die. They might leave us, right? So the safest thing would be, don't walk with anyone, be a solitary. But I don't want to be solitary. I'm scared to be communion, like in community, and I'm scared. I'm kind of distressed to be alone. This lumpy business is not it's not that great, actually, right? Not only that, but we reward ourselves by going out and buying beautiful new lumps, right? Oh, you can Google it. You can go shop on Amazon. Lumpy, should call themselves Lumpy Zone, right? And they sell you all these lumps, which are to satisfy other lumps. Little being seeks greater being. A solitary trek to know cooperates with other beings. So we have a little spiritual sangha, right? We have our close friends and so on, right? Cooperates with other beings, fashioning a stronger car than my own solidness. So we might discover, Dharma teaching, right? It feels like a vehicle. I'm discovering together we can make a vehicle that we can cross the deserts who we are, right? This kind of, this vast empty, deserts are incredibly full of life and beautiful. But this is actually talking about a desert in a sense like it's kind of emptiness. It's kind of empty, dry, sere. To cross the deserts who we are and come back home. We're trying to do this, to come back home where safe and meaningful we rest. This wandering on in solitude, this process of getting involved with teachings and therapy and self-help stuff and self-improvement, all this is seen as normal and as sane. Despite the fact it gives us pain. The blindfolds wrap around our eyes, confuse our hearing of the cries. We stumble on, yearning for grace, while blindly building bridges into space. We want to bridge across to something and we don't even know what we're going to. It's like we're building these bridges. My meditation is a bridge to take me to somewhere, right? But it's like these lumps. It's an amazing, heroic project, right? Yet, in the building, knowing flowers. Lifts the heart, bestows a power to temporarily rip right off the blindfolds we have learned to love. And being sees itself anew. A family drama drenched in grace, a jewel-like city, all of space, an interbeing born from search, awakens from the lump-like sleep of separated being things. And it's like in the effort of fashioning the better car to cross the deserts where we are, right? Knowing blossoms, understanding, through the struggle itself. This is the path, right? It's like it's a small path kind of thing. This is what they mean when they're not being sectarian in Buddhism, and they use the word Hinayana. They mean small. It's more like a small path. It's a lumpy path, like little lump here, right? This is the path for little lumps. Behave right, follow the commandments, do what you're told, develop the parami, collect this, do the accumulations, collect all the accumulations. This is what you're doing as a lump, you're doing this. But gradually in the process, understanding the interbeingness, the interconnectedness as we're working together, intuitively you begin to say, we're kind of in this together, right? Something's kind of connecting here. An interbeing born from search awakens from the lump-like sleep of separated being things. It breathes deep breaths of vast relief to find itself with new belief. A joyous dance, a wonderful party. Cooperation rules the day from micro to the macro play. Filigree webs of harmony, mother, father, sister, brother, atoms all in this palace place, revealing looms of time and space. Join hearts together, praising grace, and drunken now, intoxicated with vaster knowing, we fail to notice blindfolds even still are present here. And there's a phase like for lumps, like, like you can't imagine a liberation more than this interbeing, the whole universe connected and so on, right? And yet, and we finally get a glimpse of it and we kind of grab it and we nurture it and we work with it and we get better at it, so to speak, and begin to recognize it more and more spontaneously in our living, right? But we fail to notice even still blindfolds that are present. In the beginning were lumps lost in space, desperately crying out for grace. Now there are tapestries of being, networkings of flashing parts that mesmerize and lull the heart to think we have at last arrived. And now, a vaster universe reveals a jewel-encrusted desert here to deal us yet another challenge. O invisible interbeing of wondrous giving heart, wake up! You cannot rest. Look deeper still. And every interbeing thing dissolves and vanishes from thought into the mystery, awesome, vast. Space and time, all concepts fade. Hair stands on end and tears flow freely, as interbeing itself betrays our childlike trust and fades to where words fail to paint a picture in the boundless space, touching all with fathomless grace and hinting at a new and terrifying place of constant interbecoming. It's like Thomas Berry, Father Thomas Berry, who drew people's attention to the possibility of not conceiving ecology as a study of the kind of a web of interconnected objects or processes even, right? But actually to see it as a communion of subjects. Okay? And so, we have this kind of, we think, oh, it's interbeing. Oh, I understand, it's all interbeing. We're all interconnected. I mean, we all know we're all interconnected. And yet, somehow, there's still a greater challenge that's facing us. It hasn't solved all the problems of the world to have this intellectual understanding that it's all interconnected. Okay? And we get a kind of a hint at something which is slow. When we first begin to recognize it, it can shake us to our core. That we are, in a sense, engaged in this vast process of interbecoming. It's not finished. It's continuous in process. How on earth can you possibly know who you are as a lump when the lump itself is transforming continuously as it goes? And the lump disappears. And they say, oh yeah, but we're actually an interaction of cells and molecules and so on. And then we realize that cells and molecules are actually concepts invented in the mind of observers to try and explain something, some phenomena of light or some kind of sort of epiphenomena that's flowing off the side. And we try and make a story. We're trying to understand this, trying to meet with this. Space and time, all concepts fade. Right? Even the space and time, lumps move through space and time. It's like, better just listen. Hair stands on end and tears flow freely as interbeing itself betrays our childlike trust and fails to paint. And fades to where words fail to paint a picture in the boundless space. You know, like, what on earth's going on? Tell me. You say, oh, well, this is going on. We're painting pictures, right? Would it be possible to somehow live in the midst of this without painting a picture? Or without believing that the picture is it fixed? You know? It's subtle. Right? And fades to where words fail to paint a picture in the boundless space, touching all with fathomless grace, and hinting at a new and terrifying place of constant interbecoming. And then the poem kind of shifts gear, feeling the stories, running from faraway places, dreaming, oh, the vastness of the dreaming. Right? Familiar moments, sitting around fires that flicker shadows on evanescent caves of living rock. Fires of wood, of coal, of oil, of uranium. The stories are still the same, right? From caveman days, right? Up through the kind of beginning of the Industrial Revolution, right up to today. We're still sitting around our campfires, right? Now they advertise and you can buy 2 for the cost of 1, and they save and there are these little electric things that go around and turn on, and you can be warm outside when it's snowing. I saw it on TV, right? So these are our campfires. We're sitting around, right? We sit around the baseboard heater or something, and right? Familiar moments. Sitting around fires that flicker shadows on evanescent caves of living rock. Just living rock. This cave's living rock. Fires of wood, of coal, of oil, of uranium. The stories are still the same. Looking into the darkness, beyond the dancing light play, we strain to see, compelled to know, what is the fundamental stuff? And at this stage we go, oh, it's all mind. The fundamental stuff is mind, or mind moments, or right? Or fundamental stuff is atoms, or the fundamental stuff is quarks, or the fundamental stuff is bits of God. I don't know, you name it, but we're straining, we're looking into we're trying to make it so we kind of want to know what is it's not lumps, I know that. We're looking for the fundamental stuff. What cultures rose and fell? Wars were fought to see which view supreme, yet rarely seeing lightly hidden truth. That in seeking the fundamental, we are all of us living the same age-old story. Join with me for a moment, if you can, and let your imagination venture forth into a strange and hugely disturbing territory. Can you imagine a world with nothing as fundamental? No primary building blocks. No safe haven of reliability. Can you soften into an endless moment so staggering, yet so familiar? Habit relates everything to our body. We created a story to understand the universe, and then we're eaten by the monster story of our own making. Perhaps our task is to be storytellers, not custodians of ancient lore, but creators of future lore. The stories we tell is the world our children will see. Lumps, interbeing, what? A non-linear timeshare universe. So here's the story. Spurting and jumping and oozing and flowing and thoroughly drenched within, stretching and binding and reaching and grinding, buzzing of rivers lingering in the cochlea. Tongue reaches wildly for tastes yet unknown. Photons from Betelgeuse ripple memories from childhood, and the salt oceans flow and flow and flow. Vast, multi-dimensional interbecoming gives a collage of images in a chaos of rightly touching. Mind, in a stunning leap of creative exuberance, conceives itself in form from the foaming ocean, and, like a bubble floating above the ferment, feels itself to be good. This is a story. Images linking, memory fastening, a filigree piece of wire and gemstone, hardened in the forge of other people's views, we craft a self, a platform, a launching gantry, a bridge abutment, a battering ram, a carriage, a fulcrum against which the lever can move a cosmos of matter. Though what does it matter? A patter, a splatter, a crack, and a groan. I wake, spontaneously sprung from the foaming of sea, and the spelling of sea wasn't S-E-A, it's S-E-E. Right? Spontaneously sprung from the foaming of sea, my history's fresh as I bake it each morning. Constantly, our history is the story. That's what histoire, story. Right? It's like it's fresh. We bake it each morning, each morning. This morning of this day, constant. My history's fresh as I bake it each morning, mourning the death of a life barely lived, constantly reaching. And where is it going, this nectar of knowing, this potion of caring? Mobius strips turn slowly in space. The stories loop backwards, radiating wonderment to all ears that hear. Love from the heart filled with grace. This is my face. Finished. The poem kind of emerged in 1995. It was kind of it's old hats, old stuff. We've moved on from there, right? And you know, when I was looking at it today, you know, before the class, I was considering sharing it with you. It struck me in a way that, you know, the being, it really encapsulates so much of Dharma teaching. Okay? Being is a lonely space, you know, the lump phase could be called, this is like the three natures in Yogacara philosophy, right? There's like the parikalpita, right? Which is the kind of illusory nature, right? That we are lumps, that we're kind of fixed lumps, right? And so on. And then gradually we, through the exploration, through working together to fashion better cars, it doesn't always work. Lots of times we fashion a better car and the wheels fall off. You know, our aspiration is a better car, but sometimes we make a dud, right? And then we have to have a story like reincarnation or something, you know, because it's the only way to navigate. I blew it. Oh well, better chance next time. Good, go for it. That's a good story, right? You know, all of this helps us to keep going with this, right? That parikalpita, like Janet, you can't stop being Janet, you lump. Right? We're all kind of just, you know, I mean, look at balls. Lumps, right? Familiar looking lumps. That's how we define, that's how we identify this lump. I mean, if it constantly, like if you, one day you come out showing and I thought, oh, it's a butterfly, who are you? Oh, I'm Janet. Right? Next day an eel comes in, you know, like, I'm Janet. You know, the next time there's a cowbell tree, I'm Janet. It's like we identify the lumps by the shape of the lump and what they do. Like we make a story about it, right? And this kind of, and at the same time, we actually believe that this lump has somehow got some, you know, there's me, there's this kind of thing here. This is parikalpita, right? And then we begin to intuit the kind of reality of the interbeing, interknowing, collaborative nature of becoming starts to emerge and becomes more real. It starts to shift from being merely a kind of wonderful concept to being something that actually informs your decisions and your actions. You actually act as if that was true, right? Not just, this is true, but you act as if we're in a lump universe, right? When you really realize what I do affects you and what you do affects me and what people are doing in Gaza is affecting us here in New Zealand and what we're doing in New Zealand is affecting people in Gaza. We're in this together, right? And so we begin to emerge into what in the Yogacara tradition we call Paratantra, right? And it's like the interbeing nature, right? The first one is this kind of the illusory-like nature because, you know, we think the world's made of these lumps. And now we're beginning to see the interconnected, interdependent nature, right? This is Paratantra. Right? And then towards the end, it's like suggests that even this can have its own kind of jewel-encrusted desert. You know, can we realize we can be blinded by, it's all interconnected like this, right? You know, what do we mean it's all that? We're still looking for an ecology of interconnected objects. What does it mean to, like, even a communion of subjects? Or what happens when the subject, everything disappears? The third nature is called parinispana, right? Which is sometimes, that one has a greater variety of translations because it's really untranslatable. It's kind of the perfect nature, the ultimate real nature. The whole thing is kind of unknowable, ungraspable, inconceivable, and yet it is Paratantra, and yet it is Parinispana, and yet it is Greycoat. Right? And we come to this not by studying these texts, but we come to this by, in a sense, really giving ourselves to the living that's coming, and with increasing kind of trust in faith and trust and wonderment, we give ourselves to this suchness. Right? So what kind of stories are you hypnotizing yourself and your friends with? It's a serious thing. I mean, it's kind of joking, it's light, and in a way, it's kind of a corny poem. You know, it's all this kind of cheap rhymes, grace and space, and all this. But there's something here, right? This journey of now, right? What would it be to accept the lumpy nature that I am, while simultaneously accepting the interbeing nature that I am, and simultaneously accepting the ungraspable nature that I am, and recognizing that you too are a lumpy, interbeing, ungraspable mystery, right? Each being that we meet, and to actually then shop from that perspective. I mean this in a very ordinary sense. I don't reduce everything to this, but I'm saying that even in a kind of mundane thing like going shopping, and you decide between buying this thing and buying that thing, or spending more money on this or saving money on that, or whatever it is, like that, to have that decision just of like which soap to buy, you know what I mean? Like which thing you're getting, right, is a reflection of your view about life and the universe, right? Are we still just chronically left with lumps? And to what degree are we trying to fashion a stronger car to cross the deserts where we are? And we think we can Google better cars. Look it up. I'm sure if you Google better cars, you'll get a whole lot of sites, better cars. Right? You could go there and you can get yourself a better car, right? As if somehow I could buy a Buddhist car, or I could buy a Vedantic car, or I could buy a yoga car, or I could buy a social work car, or a psychotherapy car, or an artist car, or an economist's car, or whatever, right? But actually we fashion the car, we're building we are the car, and the desert that we're going to drive across we are the desert, and we are right? Crossing the desert, who we are. Whew. I call this a journey of now because all of this is now. It's not a kind of a consecutive linear unfolding, right? It's like all of this. Right now we're sitting around some kind of metaphoric campfire, yarning with each other. I like that, eh? Telling stories is not as good as yarning, right? Yarning also for me has a sense of weaving and the yarn and the, like it's a richer thing, but that's what stories are, yarning. Right? And are our stories fruitful and useful? This is a really serious question, right? The idea that you're going to, oh no, I don't want stories, I just want reality the way it really is. But consider the possibility that all your experience is actually part of an ongoing story, right? That we are kind of collectively, together, creatively bringing forth. Just the last part. The internal mystery of God knows whatness, spurting and jumping and oozing and flowing and thoroughly drenched within, right? Cell moving down fallopian tube towards uterus, right? Beginning of human being, or of, like a placental being, right? Stretching and binding and reaching and grinding, buzzing of rivers lingering in the cochlea. Tongues reaching wildly for tastes yet unknown. It's just, look at the child, look at the living being. You're still, even as an old being, we're still like reaching. right? Photons from Betelgeuse ripple memories from childhood, right? So it's like that star, this light that's been traveling for years, right? It comes into my retina, and there's this kind of feeling memory of being in the dark as a child on a kind of beautiful moment, perhaps, or not. Doesn't have to be a scary moment. Okay? Photons from Betelgeuse ripple memories from childhood, and the salt oceans flow and flow. Your body, your water, your liquid, salty, it's like cycling through. The oceans are water is cycling through, the flesh is cycling through. Vast, multi-dimensional interbecoming gives a collage of images. Okay? One moment the images of the warehouse where everyone gets a bargain, right? And then the next thing is, oh wow, constant, like a whole, the Bay of Plenty as this kind of volume of beating hearts. There's hearts beating inside each human being. You're in the house, across the road, there's a bunch of beating hearts. In the field, there's a whole bunch of cow hearts beating. Boom, 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 boom. There's birds around on the outside, and they've got little bip, 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 bip. You know, it's like, wow. It's like, and you might, one day you might just, that comes into mind. It's an image, right? Comes in, oh, and then that's gone. And it's kind of back to, oh, I've got to do this. You got another image. It's a collage, right? A collage of images in a chaos of rightly touching. They somehow go together, and it kind of makes sense to have a thought and a random thought and a speculation and then a worry and then a kind of attention to your body, and it kind of, you know, it feels like this is what real is. It feels right. Mind, in a stunning leap of creative exuberance, like knowing, the field of knowing, in a stunning leap of creative exuberance. I like this, you know, like it's not, you know, like self is a negative thing, you got to get rid of the self. There is no self. No, this is like an amazing creation, right? Creative exuberance, right? Conceives itself in form from the foaming ocean, right? Of all this happening. Right? Imagine, like right now we're just kind of, your experience is kind of coming up from the ocean of our, you know, we're all molecules, if you like, of this ocean, and the waves are constantly coming up and then vanishing away. And in this kind of class, I go on at such a rate of knots that you don't have any time to worry about it. But on some days, you grab one wave and you think, oh, this wave is like, you're going to worry about this wave and deal with this wave, and right? And actually, back it goes into the ocean, and another wave comes up. And after a while, you begin to really think, well, you know, maybe I'll shift from being a wave and I'll start to identify with being the ocean. That maybe it's kind of at least a little better way of being. Are you a drip? Remember last week? Are you a drip or are you the ocean? Mind, in a stunning leap of creative exuberance, conceives itself in form from the foaming ocean, and like a bubble floating above the ferment, feels itself to be good. Okay? And this is like this in the child. There's already a sense of self, but they don't, not a sense of a name. They haven't learned to speak or anything like that. There's like, right? Images are linking, memories are fastening, a filigree piece of wire and gemstone, all the connecting tissues and gems and jewels and so on. It's like Indra's net, right? You think of yourself as a jeweled being, hardened in the forge of other people's views, right? Right? You stupid child, you're always screwing up, right? And after a while, this gets forged in the fires of other people's views, right? Or, you know, it's sinful to think this or that. You know, views of religion, views of politics, views of kind of social organizing, they're all hardened in the views. we craft a self. Oh, this is what I am. I'm a fighter. I'm a mystic. I'm an artist. I'm nothing. I'm nothing. We craft a self, and depending on who you are, for some people, your self is a platform. For some people, it's a launching gantry. For some people, it's a bridge abutment, from which you can kind of bridge over to another. For some, it's a battering ram, right? You just take yourself and bam, bam, bam. And for others, it's a carriage. Oh, happy days, down we go, right? A fulcrum against which the lever can move a cosmos of matter. Me, I do this, and the whole cosmos of matter shifts and changes. Right? We invent, nanotechnologies and so on, and we carve incredibly intricate circuitries in silica or something like that, and have computers. And it's like extraordinary, right? The selves do this. A fulcrum against which the lever, the self, can move a cosmos of matter. Though, what is it, matter? A patter, a splatter, a crack, and a groan. This ongoing. And in the midst of all of this, there might be a moment where you have a feeling of, oh, I wake, spontaneously sprung from the foaming of sea. Seeing, experiencing, of looking, of engaging. Right? Somehow there's an intuitive moment. It's a blessing. This is the grace, the fathomless grace. My history's fresh as I bake it each morning. And because of that, Robert Aiken Roshi felt that it was necessary to make sure that the bread was good every single morning. And so that was a bread recipe that we started with, right? How to bake a good day. Okay. Mobius strips turning slowly in space. It's an image, that's all. But it seems like, the inside leads to the outside leads to the inside. Okay. It reminds me of a very early poem that came, this one's quite short, but now I suddenly thought of it, random thought. This was June 1981, halfway through a 7 months retreat. Inside out is right way in, where there seem boundaries, yet is boundless. Where many play, yet only one is. Where movements are, yet there is no beginning or end. Where everything is centered, yet there is no center. Where dancing takes place, yet nothing moves. Where I is all one unbounded, immediate, incredible whole, infinitely small and large, complex and simple all at once. There is the appearance of the snow-white milkweed seed, puffed from everywhere, floating in the void. Stories loop backwards, the inside. It's kind of Mobius strip, inside seems to be outside, outside seems to be inside. Right? And so it's all right, we can, and one day we can just hold this more, some days we can hold this more lightly. It somehow feels profound. Radiating wonderment to all ears that hear. Right? Mother Teresa's ears and God's ears. Right? Everyone listening to everyone. Love from the heart. Heart filled with grace. This is my face. This is your face. Finished. The words are finished. But obviously it was a passing realization, because I cranked out tons and tons of words, and I'm still doing it, right? But we can learn to dance in the midst of all this, holding it lightly. Are there any thoughts or observations triggered from these ideas that you'd like to share?
There's just too many of them. Thank you, Tachin. Thank you. Just trying to think of the one that really struck me was about it's hard to remember. I think that idea of who we craft ourselves to be, to hypnotise. Was that, did you use the word hypnotise others?
At one point I mentioned that, but that was not in the poem, that was a,
No.
that was a commentary on the side.
You were commenting on something in the poem, I think. And that was the first question that really struck me. And I remember thinking, oh, I need Tachin to ask that question again, because it was just, struck me. And then, but I didn't want to interrupt what you were carrying on saying, because that was also very important to hear as well. So it
Just
was
let it
kind of
sit.
difficult to hold everything. Yeah. Thank you.
I have an observation. Back in the 70s, we thought, oh, everything like humanity is evolving, and by the time we get to this point in time, we'll be in such a good place. And we just fled the US because that's not the fact. It seems on a daily basis, I seem to feel that humanity's devolving, and there's a certain amount of daily despair. And what I need is a copy of that bread recipe so I can reset that on a daily basis.
Yeah, if anyone, I'm hesitant to, I don't know if this poem's online, Robert Aiken Roshi's poem. But if any of you, if you send me an email if you want a copy, and I'll just send it to you individually as an attachment. I don't really want to post his poems up on Green Dharma Treasury without asking him, and I can't ask him because he's not here, and he died, right? And so, but I'm happy to share it. I can easily just send you a file. So if you're particularly wanting that one, let me know.
I too felt this element of painting the world you live in being a very important one. And the story, I mean, earlier you asked what story are you creating, or what, and actually realizing that one has the ability to modify that is quite powerful.
And not only that, but I mean, we can see how we can negatively, in a sense, forged in the fires of other people's views, you know what I mean? But there's no reason why we can't flip this around the other way around. And that is that we paint a beautiful picture, and that is part of the environment of others, and is part of the shaping of their being. And you know, I mean, I think this too, for some people, it is an answer to the impossible question that we might have of what do I do now, and we don't have a clue what to do, right? And we can realize that being worried about not having a clue what to do, you know, how to respond skillfully to the situation, make it better or anything, and how do you make a situation better if someone is dying? If better means not dying, you can't. It's impossible. So you either have to embrace this with utter depression and despair because you're ultimately a failure, right? Or you change the story, kind of paint a different picture, and realize that I can be present. I can give love from the heart. I can give calm. I can give groundedness. It's kind of an invisible quality, like to be with someone who's more grounded when we're feeling ungrounded is tangible. You can feel the kind of, there's something there, kind of settle. This is an offering. It doesn't have to be with words. It doesn't even have to be with actions. It just has, it's like through our living, our beingness. The only thing I have to offer to you is the living that I am. I don't have the living that I am, and then I've got extra stuff on top that I can offer you. It doesn't exist. And this applies to everyone. Yeah. Good. Just have a last little hello to everyone. I've got these kind of names, but no people, but lovely.
I think what really made sense, to me personally, because I wanted to say something in the beginning, and everything just kept changing all the time, what I'm going to say.
Yes.
And just depending on, I don't know, whatever comes up, I suppose. And then when you brought up that analogy of the wave, and I thought, yeah, it's just like that, and then very caught up in every individual wave calling at me, and never ever having the question of, because I read it the other day, I was reading Chogyam's work.
Trungpa?
Who?
Chogyam Trungpa?
Yep.
Yeah.
And he talked about how, it arises from somewhere, it dwells somewhere, and then it goes away somewhere, And when I read it, I thought, oh yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's not like that I could ever, I did try to see where it arose from, and I really can't see. And I really can't see where it dwells or where it goes away to, but I do have a sense that every time that process happens, there's me involved, there's a me pops up.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all different. Like in the morning, there can be some me's, and in the afternoon, there'll be different me's.
So try, just entertain the story of you as ocean,
Yes.
right? And then celebrate the way the light reflects off your waves. The sun shines down, and the wavelets are dancing, and the light is sparkling, right? And and it doesn't matter what the wave is, it still reflects light, right? And it goes and the sparkles disappear. You don't freak out the ocean's disappearing or something, because the right? Some days it goes kind of flat and it doesn't look sparkly, but it looks more like mirror-like. And some days it's very tumultuous, but it's still ocean. And this ocean isn't down there. It's not like if you look out, on the other side of Matakano Island, there's the ocean. The ocean is here. Right now, we just settle down into the ocean. And then anything you experience is appreciating wave. There is no ocean without wave. There's no such thing as an ocean without wave. Ocean's wave. Hello. So, good. By the power of these wholesome activities, may our lives be rich with awakening. Living thus, may we abandon all unwholesomeness. In the very midst of this staggering mystery of being and becoming and lumping and interbeing and oceaning and waving and God knows whating, in the midst of all of this, may we help all beings to realize their true interbeing, interknowing nature. Sarvamangalam, Sarvamangalam, Sarvamangalam. Thank you. And thank you all who joined us on the net, wherever you are and however you are. May your time with all the people you live with go well. And perhaps we'll see you again in a month. Good.